Section 11.3, Geometric Sequences and Series. So we just spent the last section on arithmetic sequences and series. Now we're going to see how geometric sequences and series compare. So let's start off by talking about what a geometric sequence is. It is a sequence in which each term after the first is obtained by multiplying the preceding term by a fixed non-zero real number called the common ratio. Okay, so take that in. To generate a geometric sequence, each term after the first is obtained by multiplying the preceding term by a fixed number. Okay, so let me give you an example. Say we have this sequence 4, 12, 36, 108, and I'll give you one more term, 324, and then so on. Okay, let's think about how we go from one term to the next. Okay, to go from 4 to 12, we have to multiply by 3. Okay, to go from 12 to 36, we multiply by 3. Okay, and then to go from 36 to 108, we also multiply by 3. And then guess what? To go from 108 to 324, we multiply by 3. Okay, so to go from one term to the next, you're always multiplying by the same number. Okay, that is called the common ratio. Okay, we denote it with an R. So the common ratio in this situation is 3. It is the number you have to multiply by, not divide by. It's the number you multiply by to go from one term to the next. Okay, so underneath this, there's the formal definition of common ratio. Okay, it says if the common ratio of a geometric sequence is R, then for every positive integer n in the domain of the sequence, you can obtain the common ratio R by taking an plus 1 and dividing by an. Okay, so what this box is saying, you need to take a term and divide by the term that comes before it. And that's how you can obtain the R value. Okay, so make sure when you're doing geometric sequences, okay, that you're obtaining your R value in the correct manner. Okay, if you're just looking at it and not using a formula, you just tell yourself, okay, how do I go from one term to the next? What do I multiply by? If you're actually trying to use this formula, you have to take a term and divide by the term that came before it. So for example, if I take 108 here, I can divide it by the term that comes before it, which is 36, okay? And then that's one way I can get 3. Okay, so just be careful if you need to be multiplying or dividing to get your R value, okay? All right, so again, remember this, to find the common ratio, you just need to choose any term after the first and divide it by the preceding term, okay? All right, so in the first example, there are a couple of geometric sequences, and we're just going to determine the common ratio R for each sequence. All right, in part A, the sequence we have is -25, 5, -1, and 1/5, and then so on. All right, so something different about this sequence that you did not see with arithmetic sequences is that the signs alternate. So the first term is negative, the second is positive, the third is negative, and the fourth is positive, and so on. Okay, so you see alternating signs. Okay, so let's go ahead and try to figure out what the common ratio is. Okay, ask yourself here, how do I go from -25 to 5? What do you multiply by? Okay, so I don't know. It might be a little confusing because we have fractions involved here. Okay, so let's go ahead and rely on that trusty little formula. Okay, in the box, we need to take a term and divide by the preceding term. All right, so I think the easiest pair of numbers here are going to be 5 and -1. Okay, so if I take a term, I'm going to pick -1 here, and I divide by the term that came before it, which is 5, that's going to tell me what my common ratio is. Okay, so what that tells me is that to go from one term to the next here, I need to multiply by -1/5. Okay, so basically you can check this. If I go from -25 and I multiply it by -1/5, okay, that's going to give me the +5. Okay, and then to go from 5 to -1, okay, I need to take 5 and multiply it by -1/5. That's going to give me the -1. Okay, and then to go from -1 to +1/5, okay, you again have to multiply by -1/5. Okay, because if I take -1 and multiply by -1/5, that will give me the +1/5. Okay, so that's what's going on here. Okay, the common ratio is -1/5. It is the number you have to multiply by to go from one term to the next. Okay, you can see here if the R value is negative, so if R is negative, that's what's causing the alternating signs. Okay, so if R is negative, signs will alternate. Okay, that's not a thing with arithmetic. Okay, all right, let's look at the next sequence. Okay, this time we've got 1/2, 2/3, 8/9, 32/27, and so on. Okay, all of the terms are positive. Okay, and we continue on. What that tells us is that we're going to have a positive R value. Okay, again, how do we go from one term to the next? Well, the easiest thing, and especially because we have fractions here, just pick a term and divide by the term that came before it. Okay, it doesn't matter which pair you use. Okay, I'll go with the last pair here. Okay, so if I pick 32/27, okay, that's the fourth term, I need to divide by the term that came before it, which is the third term. Okay, so here we are dividing fractions. Remember how you do that. You need to leave the top fraction alone. Okay, and I actually wrote the wrong thing here. This is 27. Okay, so we need to take 32/27 and we need to divide by 8/9. So we need to change the division to multiplication, flip the bottom fraction. Okay, then we can do 9 goes into 9 once, 9 goes into 27 3 times, and then we can also do 8 goes into 8 once, 8 goes into 32 4 times. And so if we just multiply across the top and bottom, 4 times 1 is 4, 3 times 1 is 3. The common ratio here is 4/3. Okay, here's your R value. Okay, we say common ratio for geometric, common difference for arithmetic. Okay, so what this tells me, and you can check yourself here, to go from each term, one term to the next, you've got to multiply by 4/3. Okay, if I start with the first term, 1/2, and I multiply by 4/3, okay, to multiply fractions, you multiply across the top and across the bottom. Okay, so here we would have 4/2 times 3 is 6. That reduces to 2/3, which is the second term. Okay, and then if we start with the second term, 2/3, and we multiply by the common ratio here, multiply across the top, we'll get 8, multiply across the bottom, we'll get 9. Okay, that's the third term, 8/9. Okay, if we check out the next set here, okay, if we take 8/9 and multiply by the common ratio, multiply across the top and across the bottom, we get the fourth term, and so on. Okay, so R is the number you have to multiply by to go from one term to the next. Okay, but remember to calculate it, you take a term and divide by the term that came before it.